Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Yellowstone County will not implement further restrictions once the current health order expires Friday at midnight.
As we adjust to life with COVID-19, no symptom is too minor to be ignored.
Health Officer John Felton says we must all continue to social distance, track our symptoms if we have them, know where we've been, and do our parts as we open our communities. Now, Felton making it very clear that even though businesses may open soon, it doesn't mean we can let our guard down. Q2's Russ Riesinger joins us now with more. Russ.
Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton said he has no intention of amending the governor's order at this time, but he could under Montana law if it became clear that the virus was starting to overwhelm hospitals and spreading in other vulnerable populations. He did say as businesses begin to open again here in Billings and across Montana that we can expect to see more cases of COVID-19, but that won't necessarily mean more restrictions.
As businesses reopen and people adjust to this new normal, we expect to see new cases of COVID-19. We expect to see more positive cases. We also expect to see more cases of COVID-19 because we're expanding our testing protocols to include more symptomatic people.
Felton says that more than half of Yellowstone County restaurants, bars, casinos, and other food service establishments have filed their reopening plans with Riverstone Health. There are new limits on how many people can enter and how they can be seated. Felton says guidance is also being given to salons, and there will also be materials to help places of worship with their plans soon. Meanwhile, he's asking everyone to continue to social distance and also keep a daily log of where you've been and who you were with in hopes of stopping any outbreaks sooner.
All of us need to be able to answer that question as we begin to reopen things. Whether you use online calendars, calendar apps, or just the old-fashioned paper calendar, we're going to ask you to keep track of where you've been, when you went, how long you were there, and who you were with.
Felton asking all of us to continue to do our parts. He says failure to do so will mean more sick people, increased demand on health care and social service systems, and more families burying their loved ones ultimately. In Billings, I'm Russ Riesinger reporting for MTN News.
Thanks, Russ. Now, tomorrow, the Economic Response and Recovery Branch of the COVID-19 Command will share more tools for our business community. Well, as we head into the reopening of Montana this weekend, Governor Bullock today made it clear the state and its citizens still have an uncertain road ahead to full recovery and something that resembles normal daily life. Here's MTN's Mike Dennison.
Under phase one of the reopening, church services and many retail businesses can reopen this coming week, and restaurants and bars on May 4th, but still with strict social distancing protocol. It's already being asked, when do we reach phase 2 with fewer restrictions, and phase 3, which is almost back to normal? Governor Bullock says that depends.
We were taking steps to isolate and social distance long before most states. That's what got us to this point. So I think that phase 2, we need to be looking at what is happening with additional COVID-19 positives. Is it around the state? Is it completely regionalized or in one individual area?
That means testing and tracing the contacts of those who have tested positive for the virus. Right now, anyone with COVID-19 symptoms should be tested, but there's still not enough tests for those without symptoms, even if they've been in contact with someone who tested positive.
We'll continue to work on amping up testing capabilities and opportunities.
Still, local public health officials are tracing contacts and asking them to isolate and get tested if symptoms do appear.
Just as I've worked in every corner of the state to say, don't ever tell me that supply constraints are what's keeping you from testing someone that's symptomatic. We'll be working closely with local health departments to say, if you need additional resources, you tell us and we'll work to get them for you.
Anyone visiting from out of state is still being asked to quarantine for 14 days after they arrive, and that wouldn't be lifted until phase 3. Does that put the summer tourism season in jeopardy? Bullock said he realizes the tourism industry is hurting, like a lot of businesses. But he said he won't be encouraging people to come to Montana until he's sure it's safe for Montanans, and again, that means watching the data.
This is a rapidly dynamic and changing time, so we have to see what's happening on the ground in our communities as we talk about what the next steps are and when we might reopen our state entirely for out-of-state tourism. At this point, we have to see what happens through phase one to see how our communities react and how COVID-19 reacts.
One thing we can say with certainty, it looks like social distancing in one form or another will be with us for some time. At the Capitol, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Mike. Now, copies of the details of phase one of the reopening and what phase 2 and 3 would look like are on our website, KTVQ.com. Well, today, Montana reports 3 new positive COVID-19 cases, 2 of those in Yellowstone County and 1 in Gallatin County. The total number of reported cases across the state has now reached 442. The state says 306 of those have recovered. 14 people have died. Now we go to Wyoming, where a Teton County resident has died while fighting COVID-19. The victim is described as an older man with pre-existing conditions. He was hospitalized in another state when he passed away. Wyoming now has 332 confirmed cases and 7 deaths. Wyoming Governor Mark Gordon announced today the state will begin easing restrictions soon, but not before the current deadline of April 30th. Gordon said he would let county health officers apply for variances to the state restrictions. Well, whether it's been called the Midland Empire Fair, the Yellowstone Exhibition, or Montana Fair, the event has never been canceled. And now Metropark staff is looking into how it can safely keep that tradition going. Marketing manager Ray Massey says kids and their livestock are a huge motivation to keep the fair going. He says Metropark's 155 acres provide space for physical distancing, and management is looking at frequent disinfecting, hand sanitizers, and masks.
We've been working really hard along with fairs throughout the state of Montana, our partners, our carnivals, those kind of things, in order to bring fairs to the state of Montana. We are planning for a Montana Fair to occur August 7 through 15. We've been talking to guests to kind of see what they want, but the main thing that we want to make sure happens is we have an open and safe environment for people to come and enjoy Montana Fair or any fair throughout the state of Montana this year.
Now, Metropark has already postponed Toby Keith, scheduled for September 17th, and Share on October 6th. And another note, in Canada, the Calgary Stampede, scheduled for July, has also been canceled. Well, with testing for COVID-19 still in high demand, but components in short supply, some local lab professionals are turning to innovation. St. Vincent lab techs say they saw early on how the shortage of tests was impacting patients, so they came up with their own recipe for a component of the test. When a sample is collected from a patient, the swab is placed in a vial of fluid for transport so the virus doesn't dry up. The federal government was only handing out roughly 300 of those a month to our local hospitals, but St. Vincent is now making a batch of 3,000 a month to supply all of its systems, hospitals in Montana and Colorado.
We obviously have a lot of issues with the availability of testing. That's been, widespread all over the news, but we've at least been able to alleviate some of the stress of that by being able to make certain components of the test kit so that we can at least get patients through the tent and have them be able to readily access testing. And then from there, we can determine where the tests need to be sent to get a rapid turnaround and get patients the care that they need.
What a great program. Well, tonight, a look at ways you and your family can save a little extra cash in these difficult economic times. MTN's Andy Curtis shares some budgeting tactics in tonight's Montana Rebound.
Families all across Montana right now are having to tighten their belts. And though it might seem like a pretty daunting uphill climb, with the proper budget, getting through tough financial times can be done. But first, you're going to need to take a long, hard look at your finances.
Once we understand how we usually spend, it's easier for us to make tweaks to that and start planning budgets. The biggest thing is start small. So what is one thing you can change this week that will help your financial future?
And that could be as easy as meal prepping for the week. That way, when you do go to the store, you're less likely to buy things you don't need. Another good way to start is by making coffee at home. And instead of going out and buying a few cups a week, save that money. When it comes to online shopping, delete emails for products you don't need right now. And if you really feel like you need to buy something online, it might be a good idea to click it and let it sit in your online shopping cart for a day or two. That way you can determine if it's something you actually need or something that might be considered unnecessary.
Well, you start small, weekly, monthly, and then the bigger goal is what do you want to accomplish within 6 months? Write that goal down, and how are you going to achieve that goal?
And once you start consistently meeting your budgeting and savings goals, it's time to start saving for an emergency fund. That's where you save up enough money to cover at least 3 months worth of expenses. If you found yourself trying to do a budget while unemployed, it helps to get organized and pick up the telephone.
The big thing here is if you are not bringing in enough to pay your bills currently, budget everything out, write down all of the bills that you have, and contact the people you owe the money to. Contact your landlord, contact the power company, and work out payment plans with them, because a lot of people are in this situation right now. But the worst thing you can do is not pay or avoid contacting people.
Budgeting, especially right now, can be difficult for all of us, but being diligent and thrifty can pay off in the long run. Reporting in Helena, Andy Curtis, MTN News.
Thanks, Andy. And you can catch all of the stories in our Rebound series on our website, KTVQ.com. We will run stories each day as we highlight different ways to help our economy get back on track. Well, in other news tonight, the Broadwater County Sheriff's Office is investigating a discovery of a body found south of Townsend. Sheriff Wynn Meehan says the man's body was discovered last Friday, April 17th, just off of Highway 287. Meehan says the investigation is active and involves multiple agencies. Now, the body has been identified, but the individual's name will not be released until family is notified. Well, ahead on tonight's 5:30 News, we focus in on the Democratic governor's race to hear how candidates are gearing up for the home stretch. And in sports, Scott joins us from the football field at Rocky with an update on this summer's East-West Shrine All-Star Game.
And coming up in weather, yeah, it's going to be cool for a couple of days, but we are anticipating a couple of sprinkles as well. But then after that, we are going to rebound back up into the 70s as we go into the latter part of the weekend and early next week. We'll have details coming up in a few more minutes.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.